Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to Versus Stars podcast. How my loyal listeners, thank you for continued support. And remember, click the subscribe button, everybody. It's an amazing episode because Jeremy Adams returns to the mothership. You know him as the writer of The Flash. He's now the writer of Green Lantern. Come aboard as we go traversing the stars. Hi, Mr. Adams. Thank you so much for coming to Versus Stars podcast.
I'm excited to be here.
I was returning champion. Thank you so much for coming back on. It's a thrill to talk with you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and don't call me sir, but excellent. Yes, I'm glad to be here.
So you're the new writer for Green Lantern. If anyone who knows my show knows I'm a massive Green Lantern fan, having owned every Green Lantern comic book going back to 1960. So big fan.
That's huge. Okay, don't quiz me.
But yeah, so when I say I'm a big Green Lantern fan, I mean it.
Yeah.
So when you think about Green Lantern, what does the concept mean to you?
I mean, listen, at the core of it, it's kind of a wish fulfillment thing in terms of like, oh, you get this magic ring that can do these amazing things, you know. But as it's grown, there is a certain amount of like, I love the, chosen to protect the world, protect the universe, protect the sectors, and it's obviously gotten so big and the mythology's gotten so massive.
Mm-hmm.
It's become like a space opera, bigger than anything else that exists. I mean, that's what's so funny. It's growing up in a world of Star Wars and Star Trek and all that stuff. This is much grander and complicated and has been going on for a sustained longer amount of time, than any of those things. So it's hard to quantify what it means, but for me, I was tasked with doing a Earth-based Hal Jordan, and my main goal was I want people to like Hal, I mean, that's not something that it's funny because there's a lot of people that just do not like Hal Jordan. And I'm like, no, but I think he's cool. I think he's somebody that we're going to really love because he's not just cocky, and I'm taking into account all the things that he's gone through in the history of Green Lantern and what that has done to him as a leader, as a man, etc., and him returning to Earth under mysterious circumstances and being like, okay, now I've got to figure out what my life is. What is my life without the core? Which is interesting story for me to explore, I think.
So when you think with Hal Jordan, and like I said, I've read a lot of Hal Jordan, great Hal Jordan. I read some not so great Hal Jordan. It feels like there's a line between cocky and obnoxious.
Yeah.
How do you straddle that line and make sure he doesn't fall into the obnoxious
Guy Gardner territory?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the key is to give it, his cockiness needs to be tempered with a smile. And I also think it needs to I think it's important to show that he has more dimensions than cockiness. Like he actually cares. It's not just cocky. It's also a real realization of people and what they're feeling and why he's doing this. He's not just a guy that's trying to test the limits of a jet. It's like what's the morality behind it? And the reality is he's not like John Stewart, who has kind of military background and that sense of duty and honor. Hal has some of that, but he's also much more his own person, not to be controlled. And it's funny. It's like I think about him and I think about characters like him and Barry, like the Flash, Barry Allen. These are guys that came into their power set as adults. They weren't born with them like Superman or Wonder Woman, or even trained for them as a young age like Batman. There's like a little bit of maturity there. And with Hal, I think everything he's done in the core and all the trauma that he's experienced, being Green Lantern and then being the host for Parallax and like all that stuff, I think that's really matured him in a lot of ways. It still means he's cocky, but it's with a lot of wisdom and maturity. But he's also, here he is, he's back on Earth. How much money does he have? Nothing. The world has moved on, the woman he loves is with another man. It's like, but he still is that kind of guy that goes after what he wants, and he's going to try. He's going to try. Hal is always going to try, but I also just want to give him a little bit of depth in terms of the maturity, wisdom angle too.
So is everything in play? So all continuity that we know of in play with
at least
with
for
the
me, at least until they tell me no. But that's how I approached. That's what I approached with Wally. I mean, it was very much like I was just pulling from past continuities, and it's just like, this is one thing, and it's not exact, I don't think, but neither are my memories. So it's like I'm pulling from that stuff. I really feel like the seminal stuff for me in Green Lantern, obviously some of the older stuff's really great, but the stuff where it was like Jeff and Peter Tomasi were doing Green Lantern Corps, and onward, just felt continuous to me. And it felt like it all made sense, and them building it up. And I'm obviously picking up after Jeff Thorne's like real big sci-fi epic run that was very sci-fi, and it left some of these building blocks that I want to kind of use to keep telling the Green Lantern story.
And I think with Hal Jordan, like I said, second favorite Green Lantern. Kyle Rayner is my first favorite Green Lantern, but Hal Jordan's number 2.
Of course he is. He's everybody's. It's funny. It's almost like Doctor Who. It's like, well, who's your first Lantern? I'm a big Guy Gardner fan, and somebody online he was like, oh, I hate Guy Gardner or whatever, and I'm just like, yeah, I think you're supposed to.
I think like what hurt Hal Jordan early on was that in the 60s when he came out, that's when DC was into the very two-dimensional here. Everyone, they're just good. Yeah. And then they kind of transitioned a little bit with Adam. He was kind of like, a little bit of the cop, a little bit of the noxious cop. So is it hard to try to figure out how to work in the other elements to him?
No, only because I think he's gone on an incredible journey, and I think that has, changed him, as it would. Possessed by this thing, and come back. He was like the hand of God basically for a while. Like there's all these things that he's done, and but I also think he has this innate moral sense of right and wrong, and he is that's the thing. I don't think he's I don't think he ever he's been written as a company man sometimes, and that's never the vibe that I got from him generally. But yeah, it's difficult. I mean, with comic books, it's always difficult. You're dealing with these characters that have been around for a long, long, long time. People have their own preconceived notions of them. But I'm such a fan of comics, and I usually approach these things like, I want to put the hero in superhero. So I'm not saying this is like everybody can do what they want. But for me, I'm not the deconstruct the superhero thing. Like I want to see this guy be a superhero. Like that's what I'm here for. I want him. He is a hero. He's Hal Jordan. He's the one the ring went to. He's the one that was chosen. He's considered the greatest Green Lantern for a reason. And even just saying that, people get like, oh, it's like, I kind of want to explore that. It's like, well, what makes him great? It's not the fact, I mean, he has this incredible willpower, but how does that work? How does that manifest too? Because here's this guy with incredible willpower, but like, his life's a little bit of a mess. For a guy with a lot of willpower, you'd think you'd do something like invest a penny a day or something. So can he right that ship? Because he's been in space, he's been working out there, and now he's not. And now the thing that he hung on to, he gave up because for whatever reason, he's like, no, I'm going to go back home. And that first issue of Green Lantern, there's a lot of just like him in the flashbacks is him speculating, like, what am I without this ring? And what he is he's a hero, and he will always be a hero, and you can't take it out of him,
Well, I mean, like I said, for the readers, as you mentioned, he was the Spectre for a while.
Yep.
He once again, Parallax, 0 Hour, almost destroyed the universe. He's been to the very ends of the universe as well.
Right.
Fought creatures from the pre-universe as well. I can't remember the guy's name off my head. But with all that, has it brought him wisdom?
Right. I mean, that's the piece of it. It's like it's head knowledge versus heart knowledge in a way. It's like you can have all the intel, you know, if you ever play Dungeons and Dragons, it's like, yeah, intelligence and wisdom are two separate categories.
Right, right.
You can have a lot of book knowledge, but like, are you implementing that knowledge? And I think for a guy that has this power and this willpower and save the universe and all that stuff, and at the end of the day, he's sitting around and going, what am I just going to do this? Is that it? You know, what about, I'm supposed to be protecting, I got into this because I wanted to protect people. You know, I got that, not, I was chosen to protect people, but like, am I taking part in the thing I'm supposed to protect? You know, so is he having a full human life anymore because he's out there on the range, fighting bad guys? And so I think he understands. I think part of that wisdom is realizing that, oh, I need to check in with who I am as a human being. And I think about this a lot because Dark Crisis was this kind of event focusing on the legacy characters, right? And in the DC universe right now, you know, the Titans have taken over and Wally's doing okay, and there's a lot of the legacy characters. So if that's the case, it's kind of cool to be able to talk about the other characters, you know, the characters that are watching their proteges reach their heights, and they're sitting there going like, what am I doing? You know, where's the maturity in that? Because Superman and Batman to a degree have a family. Wally has a family. I know Barry's probably like, what the heck, you know? And I think Hal to a degree is feeling that too. It's not about, oh, I'm going to get him married and I actually don't know, and have a kid or whatever. It's just more of, I know there was a time in my life that I was just having fun and I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and I kept pursuing a dream or whatever. And then there was this moment you were like, I don't know if this is as fulfilling as I think it is, you know? And I need to probably think about that and think about what it means to actually, you know, to me, to be a man, and how to treat people and how to date correctly, you know, and that was a huge revelation. That was when I turned 30, I definitely had this like, uh-oh, what am I doing? You know? So I think Hal's having just kind of this interesting moment of clarity, and it's compounded by the stuff that's happening in space. It's compounded with, you know, the pieces from Jeff Thorne's run with the Green Lantern battery had, you know, been destroyed, and the Guardians are gone, and the United Planets have taken over, and now Sector 2814 is quarantined, and it's like, you know, Hal was having none of it. And all that stuff's going to be explored a little more. But, you know, it's like, and so it's like, I'm giving this up. He's giving up the thing that he's been doing, the job, because he thinks that the life is going to be better than the job. You know, it's this work-life balance.
So, I mean, for all our listeners and everyone who reads comic books knows that you probably wrote one of the best friends of the Flash that there is.
Thank you.
And I do mean that it was a phenomenal run, and I think captured the Flash better than a lot that had come before it. Anyone who also reads it knows that, as you mentioned, the theme of the Flash is family.
Right.
What is the theme of Green Lantern?
Oh my gosh, I think it's about growing up.
Growing up
for Hal, yeah, because, and I only say that because I think he has grown up. By the way, I think he has. I think we've seen him as a leader and head of the Corps and all that stuff. But I don't think we've seen it lately, and I don't think we've seen that character growth. And so again, I want people to like Hal as a human being, as a character. I want, because like you said, when he was introduced, there were all these characters that were more ciphers. They were just like, we're imprinting things on them. And this is like a real good chance of, you know, just feeling that this guy is actually human and has dimensions to him. It's funny though, because I would see some criticism of people like, I don't like him because he threw the bottle away. And I'm like, yeah, when I reveal that there's a recycling bucket that he's hitting every time, you guys will be.
That's what they're worried about.
Yeah. Somebody was really mad about the goat. And I was like, have you ever seen a mountain goat? They are indestructible.
That's awesome. Now, one interesting question that you brought once again. So United Plans basically run the core, and like they quarantine Earth. Hal Jordan quit. So the question is, he quit, but like when a cop quits, they give up their badge and their gun. He's got the ring and is powered. So what's the deal with that?
He didn't have the ring and it's powered.
Okay.
He gave it up. I mean, if you look at Green Lantern 1, there was a flashback, and somebody had stupidly bought a Manhunter armor. Yeah. And he's like, I got to stop this guy because the cops aren't. And he smashes his truck into him. And at that point, he's realizing that there's something. Oh, I know what this is.
Oh.
And it's manipulated by will. And there ain't nobody on the planet that has better will than me. And he's done it before in comics, manifested a ring. I was just giving him the material to manifest it with. So he's going to be exploring what that new ring will do in the next couple of issues and flashbacks and stuff.
So I mentioned, if he's going around using Green Lantern power, is United Planets cool with it? That this guy on the Earth?
I mean, that's part of the story, and I would think that if word came back, that might be a problem.
I was going to say, because like I said, once again, the cop usually gives up the gun. They're not allowed to just walk around with their own gun.
Right. Correct. You get it. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of that's coming to a head, but I'm trying to focus on a smaller story right now in terms of Hal and Carol, but also Sinestro lurking in the background. And so the way that it works right now is like issue 1 and 2, it'll mostly be Hal and Hal Carol focused and Earthbound stuff. Mm-hmm. And then we have to take a 2-month break with Night Terrors. But I think I've smartly still made that about Hal, and it's going to be immediately picks up after 2. The Night Terrors are going to go for 2 issues, and then we're back to 3. And when 3 hits, it is like Sinestro overload. So there's going to be a lot of that, because again, that's another mystery too. Like, why is Sinestro on Earth? The last time we saw Sinestro, I believe, was in Dark Crisis. And before that, it was, in space in Korrigar, I think. So all those mysteries will unravel over time,
So for the listeners, can you go into a little bit the Night Terrors aspect?
So Night Terrors, as much as they've released, there is going to be this 2-month event that's taking place over every book. And there's this nightmare wave that's hit, and everybody's kind of thrust into these fear-based nightmares, and Hal is going to be confronted with some of what the nightmare wave might think is scary for Hal. But as we all know, if you're a big Green Lantern fan, not much scares Hal. So that's kind of the trick with the Green Lantern aspect, and I'm really leaning hard into it, and I'm very excited.
So is this like a Dr. Destiny situation where they're like implanted dreams, or does he exist with them? Like, how does that play out?
It's just from what I've been explained to me is it is just kind of it's almost like Nightmare on Elm Street. They're blasted into this nightmare realm that if they die in the realm, they'll die in real life type thing.
So going to a little bit more about 2814, like I said, it's quarantined.
Yeah.
Hal Jordan is at the moment Earthbound.
Yep.
He still has that means there's a whole sector not patrolled. So correct. Does Hal Jordan, what is his perspective? Does he feel responsible for the sector, or is it I'm retired?
He quit, and so there is an element of part of the reason he quit is the decision to quarantine Sector 2814. So that's just that's a part of it, and John Stewart, I think, probably in Philip Kennedy Johnson's backup issues, probably has more concerns than Hal at the time. I think Hal has concerns, but he's also he thinks how wrong it is, you know. So
Well,
yeah,
there's about 8 other Earth Green Lanterns at the moment.
correct. Yeah,
So the other 7 are can't reach Earth. I mean,
it's quarantine. They're not allowed to be there. They've been reassigned. So, you know, that's what's what right now.
that's awesome. So
Some of them have been reassigned. I think some of them have been away while this stuff is going on. So there's a little back and forth.
So the other cool thing, I mean, for those, I feel like for Green Lantern, the Rogues Gallery, the Earthbound Rogues Gallery has been mostly ignored for a couple of decades now, for the most part. I
Sure.
mean, it's
Sure.
mostly space-based problem. You know, you have a lot of Sinestro, or you have a lot of Red Lanterns, Yellow Lantern, a
Yeah.
lot of that stuff, but they've been ignoring the Earthbound Rogues Gallery, Hector Hammett, things of that nature, Sonar.
Yep.
So, can you give us some hints on who may be some of the Rogues Gallery of Green Lantern that we may see revisited?
No.
Will there
gonna,
be? Will there be?
there will be some older characters. You know, it's funny, right before this, I was just having a call with Philip Kennedy Johnson, and man, it's weird because it's just like Flash, where I'm like, I need 2 books a month, dang it. You know, because I feel like there's a lot of story that I wanna jump through. And I mean, you've already seen the little clips from the next issue with some of Green Lantern's former foes that are kind of funny, the Demolition Crew, and there are going to be some other characters that I can't wait to bring in. It's funny because in Flash 800 I have Goldface and somebody else, and I thought, oh, that's funny, you know. I'm already segueing, you know, but I don't know. I've been flipping through, and part of it is finding time within the overarching plot that I want to do. So I always want to give Hal a couple of bad guys to fight, and it's funny because the pull of Hal in space is so strong.
Yep.
You know, and because there's so many loose ends that I'm desperately, you know, want to address. It's just interesting, you know. It's fun. I mean, it's fun. It's like I'm having a great time trying to thread that needle and hoping that people will stick around and see what's what, you know, because I think by this time next year we'll have exciting stuff. I mean, we're not going to have to wait that long to find out what happened, but I think the fallout of what happened will be really interesting too.
Is there room for the tattooed man?
Is that a request? Is that what that is?
Yes.
Okay. It's good to know. Listen, I mean, that's in the Flash. That's what I did. You know, people would hit me up and be like, you know, I've said this before, like Pied Piper is a really important part of the Flash. And I was just like, oh yeah, I guess he is. Like, oh, he hasn't been around. And I was like, I got to put him back in because he's part of this Flash family. And I felt kind of the obligation of that, you know. And that's awesome. I think it's awesome because I'm just a fan that got the opportunity to write.
Well, like I said, it just seems like there's so many from the Earthbound Rogues that, like I said, I do think they've been mostly ignored for, like I said, I do think decades, as he's been so preoccupied, as you said, with space and the.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting too with Green Lantern is that I think for the last couple of decades the scope has been so large with Green Lantern that we haven't had really a lot of characters and more, you know, at the big event, the next big event.
Yeah.
It's the first time I think in a long time I think we've seen a character-driven Green Lantern, possibly.
Right. I mean, mostly because there's been all, like you said, big events and big cosmological pieces to it. This is definitely more quiet right now. It's not going to always be that way, but it's definitely more quiet because I intentionally want people to grab a hold of Hal. So when the other stuff happens, they're invested. You know, I could just go immediately super cosmic, but then it's just that's what it is.
Right.
And I always think about when I first started reading comics, I remember my dad giving me the Dark Phoenix saga, and not too far after that, he had given me Daredevil Born Again. And those were definitely marked, and things that I gravitated, they were definitely marked by these great intimate character moments. And like in Dark Phoenix saga, I remember even as a little kid, there was there was a moment where Jean Grey was like holding back Cyclops's optic blast with her telekinesis, and it was like this really heartfelt kind of romantic thing. And I was like, oh, as a kid, I was like, oh, that's pretty deep. Immediately like, where's Wolverine? No, but like it stuck with you because you cared for her, and the moment that she got killed was just, right. You're destroyed because you felt something for her.
Well, I mean, going back to like feelings, and then you said like kind of Jean Grey Cyclops is obviously Hal Jordan, Carol Ferris is one of those relationships that's been around for a while. Not always the best, I think, handled necessarily. I mean, not only does the relationship seem like why are they ever together, but there's so much else going on with Star Sapphire and all the other stuff going on. And I think she even was with Kyle Rayner for a while as well.
I don't acknowledge that, but yes, go
on.
Okay,
so there is some stuff out of play in this relationship.
Well, I'm just saying I'm not going to mention it.
So I think the big question when dealing with Carol Ferris and Hal Jordan, more than like Lois and Superman, and it's the question of why.
Yeah.
Like, what is these? They don't often show, other than the fact that she's the other character in the comic book. Why are these two together? Like, are going to be together, or have been together? I know they're not at the moment, but why?
That's exactly right. That's exactly. I mean, that's the piece of it that I don't have an answer yet. The characters are kind of telling me, and that's what I think. That's why Carol responded the way she did when she saw the Green Lantern back. She's like, oh no, like this is going to turn my life upside down. Because there are some people in your life sometimes that you have this strong affinity for or attraction to or whatever, but they may not be the healthy person for you. And I think the realistic version of this relationship is, I don't know if they'll end up together. I mean, that is legit right now. I'm telling you, I don't know. This is not Linda and Wally. This is not Lois and Clark. This is whatever. This is it even right for Hal to pursue Carol when she has another person in her life? And I don't know.
And his boss as well at the moment.
Yes. I mean, there's a certain cockiness. Like he loves her, and he knows that that's there, but at the same time, it's like, is that the appropriate thing? Like, when is it time to let go? And maybe you're not supposed to let go. Like, those are the pieces that I'm struggling with as a writer, because exactly like you said, why? There's been times where they've been together. There's been times where they've broken up. They've been times that they've moved on. And it's like, it is this very on again, off again relationship that they're having. And, but there hasn't been a moment where they both are in the same moment, that it seems mutually beneficial. And so, so I'm really trying to explore that in a really realistic, mature way, because I think the part about Hal is the wisdom part is, sometimes you think that's the person I'm supposed to be with, and maybe that person doesn't think it. When do you stop? When does the guy that never stops stop? And when is it appropriate and not appropriate? Like, there's certain things like that I think are going to be interesting dramatically to see what's happening. And I think Carol intuitively knows that Hal comes into my life and it's all going to go to hell,
And I think, once again, just we talk about Hal Jordan and developing him as a character, Carol Ferris, I think, has been in need of development for a while. I think most what you know of her, other than she likes Hal Jordan, she's been the Star Sapphire, and she has this nepotism job of Ferris Aircraft, and she's kind of like a tough owner. They don't seem to have ever really given her much more than that. So what part of her are you feeling that you can develop the most?
I just holistically, as a person that has dimensions in terms of, like, she's also experienced a great many things, and I think she's reached the point where it's like, I need to move on with my life. And as far as, like, she's got this job that she's inherited, but I think she understands the weighty responsibility of it, that this job isn't just about my name or my father's name. It's about the people that are employed here. There's a certain amount of responsibility in that. So I think she's also ambitious and driven, but I think she's looking around too, and like, sometimes you play act what you think you need to be doing instead of doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing. So I don't know. It's going to throw her life at topsy-turvy. And already I just want to, I'm not, and I'm not going to discount the stuff that she's been through, like the Star Sapphire stuff, all that jazz, is interesting. Whether or not that shows up is a totally different animal.
Well, I mean, like I said, I think what I really do enjoy is exploring like different characters, like, as you mentioned, like Sinestro as well. Now, Sinestro's had a very long, complicated relationship with Jordan. They've had the mentor-student relationship. They've had the dramatic, just the straight dramatic foil kind of relationship. They've had estranged friends. So when you're thinking about that relationship, which aspect of that history do you think is going to be played up the most?
Oh, how do I say this without getting in? I think for Hal right now in this moment, for reasons we'll explore, that I don't think he knows what Sinestro is doing. I think if he saw Sinestro, he would try to kill him. At a certain point, if you're friends with Hitler,
yes,
you kind of have to give up that friendship or whatever that is, antagonism. I look at it a lot as there is a weird respect in some ways of the ability of the others, but there's some stuff that's gone down in space that Hal is like, I want this guy gone.
Okay. Oh, you're not gonna give any more spoilers.
No. Oh no.
Well, like I said, I think
I've already said too much, my friend.
we're gonna go frame by frame and figure it out. So once again, having been also the writer for The Flash, and we know the history of Green Lantern, are we looking at a Green Lantern Flash team at some point in our future as well? And how tied into that doing of the new Flash series that's coming out with? I can't remember the name of the writer.
Cy Spurrier and Mike Deodato Jr. Yeah. No, if it wouldn't be tied into that. If it would be anything, it would be probably Barry. So I'm hoping that might be a possibility.
All right, very cool. I mean, like I said, anyone who knows Green Lantern, Green Lantern Flash, Green Lantern, Green Arrow,
right,
and both seem to be doing their own comic books right now. So the question is, who's on the table, who's not on the table?
Right. And that's always the question. That's the question I always have to float to the higher ups. The reality is, one of the reasons I'm excited about having Green Lantern on Earth is that and this is just as a fan, I love it when characters interact with other characters. I love it because it makes it feel like a whole universe. So, the fact that Hal is back in a way and that he gets to interact with those people, I think it's going to be really cool. And it's been a long time outside of Dark Crisis where there was like conversations between the two characters, but or multiple characters. It's like, this is a great non-crisis event where they, he gets to be a hero and he gets to interact with the world around him, because Green Lantern literally for how long? I mean, you would know better than I. It's mostly been outer space based sci-fi epic stuff, and it hasn't been, I mean, especially for Hal, it hasn't been earthbound talk, hanging out, fighting bad guys with other people.
I mean, so someone on who's listening can comment and tell me that I'm wrong. The last time I know of a Green Lantern, Green Arrow team that wasn't Kyle Rayner and Connor Hawke, I think we're going back to right before Emerald Twilight, and then right before, before they actually had a in their own books a team of, I may be wrong, but I think since that point it was either Rayner or Space.
So what is that, 30 years ago?
Oh my God, we're talking about mid-90s. Yeah, about 30 years, I think, before they pulled that off. And I think they had Hal Jordan and Barry Allen in, I think, the Fastest Friends miniseries, but that was I think it was a past one, because I know they had Rayner and Wally later on that same miniseries. So I think it's been a long damn time.
A long time. They had a great reunion in Dark Crisis briefly, but it was so brief because there's so much stuff going on. So yeah, and I think that's, I can only write the way I write, and there's a part of me that just wants to hear their psychology a little bit, and hear where they're at, and I love that. I that's the stuff that, I'm always chasing people like Frank Miller, but I also, like, I'm a huge Mark Grunwald fan and Chuck Dixon fan, and those guys, when they would write stuff, it just felt so constructed and well put together. And I felt like I could, like, I'll give you an example. When Chuck Dixon was running the Bat office, and it was like they would do Nightwing and
Yeah.
Robin, Tim Drake would show up in the Nightwing book, and there was just this cool like brotherly bond, and they would just kind of talk about things, and it was just kind of very everyday things while they're beating up bad guys and stuff, and that was catnip for me. You know. And then the Frank Miller of it is when you, especially the way he kind of revolutionized Batman and even Daredevil, but Batman is in particular, like whether it's the Dark Knight Return or Batman Year One, there's so much of the internal explanation of why he's doing these things and why he is going to become this vigilante, and it all just tracked with me. It was all very cool and organic, and it just made that person so much more real. And same with Daredevil, the Daredevil stuff. I mean, he's always been kind of a real character.
And it's just popped in my head, just it might be a bad analogy. The idea of you got Hal Jordan as like the Bachelor and his two best friends, Barry Allen and
right.
They had their families. Ollie, I forgot the Green Arrow's his real name. But they had both
Oliver Queen.
Oliver Queen. They have these families now, and their one friend in the middle has no one.
No one. Yeah. I mean, and it's funny though, because even those guys, I just feel like, and that's what it feels like. It feels like the old Justice League guard. They're all looking at the people below them, like grow up and stuff, and then they're like, obviously Clark is well adjusted with his wife and kids and stuff, but they all have families now in some version, and Hal is back here like, I just got back from, he's the quarterback, the football quarterback that's returned home,
right,
after being in the military somewhere, and it's just like, it's got to be weird. It's got to be a weird experience.
So we know the backup story is being written by Philip Kennedy Johnson. How tied into what you're doing is what he's doing?
Not for the initial story, nothing. It's not tied into in terms of, he's got this just, I mean, it's just too good of an idea. And so he's doing that. But we just had a call today, and our hope is that we start intertwining the books a bit to go in and out, because it would make no sense in our minds. These characters are the two only human Green Lanterns on Earth right now. And we feel like there's a lot of spaces to cross over, and we have a lot of cool stuff that we, and all of it depends upon sales. Don't pirate your comics, kids, because it could be the difference between like 100 comics can kill your book,
Yeah.
So we're hoping that we get to tell the stories we want to tell,
So when are we going to see Kyle Rayner?
Everybody's question. Well, you know what? Doom Patrol #2, I believe. Kyle Rayner and Guy Gardner are in that.
I didn't know he was in that. Damn it.
Yeah. Dennis Culver did it. It takes place before Green Lantern #1, before Sector 2814 is quarantined, but for all intents and purposes, pretty good. And Guy Gardner and Kyle Rayner are in there together, which is kind of the odd couple. So it's great.
Oh shit! Now I'm gonna be on my comic shop.
Yeah, please.
So for our listeners, so what can they look forward to in future issues of Green Lantern?
Thrills, chills. No, I think it's going to be a lot more of me exploring Hal as a character, but also some good fisticuffs. Some great action, obviously, because Zermanico, who's the artist on this book, it's just, I worked with him on Flashpoint Beyond, and he's absurdly talented. So, I will write something, and now I'm getting in the mode of like, ooh, I want to see what he does, like there's a little bit of that, and he just knocks it out of the park. So it's going to be a lot of intrigue, and we're going to get a lot more of Sinestro. That's the first leg of this journey, is kind of explore what's going on with Hal and Carol. Is going to be a continuing reoccurring thing, as it organically develops. And then Hal as a superhero is going to be a big part of it, just him, back in the grind of that. And then you have the Sinestro piece of it that's going to complicate things. And then after that, hopefully I'm still in the book and no one hates me. And then we'll move on to some other issues.
So I got one last question for you. I'm curious about with Green Lantern writers and their artists. When Green Lantern and Hal Jordan or whoever is using their ring, are you telling them what construct is being made, or are you letting the artists figure it out for themselves?
Most of the time I tell, but I also realize sometimes I'm like, this is dumb. If you have a better idea, please, please, please tell me, because that's part of the trick. I'm racking my brain to try to figure out new cool ways of using the ring and the constructs. And the reality is, when Green Lantern, at least Hal Jordan, showed up, he could use his ring in all sorts of ways that are not used now. So I'm trying to explore that. But the artist, again, the thing about Zermanico is to be like, here, I add an extra panel here. Here are 12 different versions of what we could do. And I'm just like, I'm like, that's amazing. Whatever you want. I feel like my words kind of mess up his art. Like, his art is so good. It really is. And I can't say enough good things. And that's not to mention, I've got the art back on Night Terrors 1, and Eduardo Edudu, his name is, his art is outrageously good too. It's an embarrassment of riches. And what's great about it is, good art covers a multitude of sins. Like, I'm like, oh, that line may not be great, but boy, that page is awesome.
Well, Mr. Adams, it's been an absolute honor to speak with you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You too.